Hello, my peeps, and welcome to another power-packed Phillips podcast.
Taxi!
No, 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 no! You're not taking a
Taxi!
until you finish watching this podcast. Please take a moment to read your MSAs.
What?
You know, math service announcements.
Whatever.
Today's podcast is going to be on lesson 9.6. This will be part 2 of factoring. Come on, no need to. It's really not that bad. Alright, in yesterday's podcast we talked about factoring when the coefficient was not 1. And we went through, for some of you, a convoluted, complicated process, and we said take the first number, multiply it by the second number. In this case it would give us 30, then list all the factors of 30. Well, we are going to do the same problem from the last podcast, same problem, but we are going to do it a different way. No, you won't be saying ow when you're done watching this. I think you will like this way better.
What?
I said we're going to work the same problem as yesterday, but a different way.
Wow!
And I think when you're done with it, you will like it.
Yes!
In fact, you might like it so much, you might yodel on the way out of my room.
Yolo, hee-hee. Yolo, lolo, lolo, hee-hee.
Alright, so let's get to it. Write down the same trinomial that you should have written down yesterday that I know all of you did. Excuse me, something in my throat. Please write down 3n squared minus 17n plus 10. Remember, same problem, different way. First thing we're going to do, write 2 sets of parentheses under the problem. Easy pleasy. Next thing we're going to do is look at this coefficient. It's not 1, it's 3. So what can we multiply together to make 3? 1 times 3. So we're going to place a 1 and a 3 at the front of each of our parentheses. Place a 1 and a 3 because 1 times 3 gives us 3. Now let's look at our variable. What can we multiply together to get n squared? That would be n times n. Hey Casper. So place an n right here. Place another n right here. Check your work. 1 times 3 is 3. N times n is n squared. Here's our first term, 3n squared. Good so far. Remember, different way than yesterday. Look at the last term. What are all the numbers or factors you can multiply together to make 10, in this case positive 10. So we're going to write m for multiplication above the last term. BTW, this would be poison ivy. We don't want to touch the middle term. And this is a troll, which we'll explain later. So I want to get all the numbers I can multiply together to get plus 10. I can do 1 times 10, 2 times 5. 3 will not work. 4 will not work. I do 5 times 2. Remember, as soon as you find a pair that repeats, you can stop. So I can do positive 1 times positive 10. I can do positive 2 times positive 5. Remember, I also could do a negative 1 times negative 10. I also could do negative 2 times negative 5 to give me positive 10. Remember to write down all of your possible combinations. Hello, my peeps, and welcome to another power-packed Phillips podcast.
Taxi!
No, you can't take a
Taxi!
until you finish watching this podcast. Then you can call for a
Taxi!
All right, here we go. Please take a moment to read your MSAs. Today's podcast is going to be on lesson 9.6. This will be part 2. We are still working on factoring. No reason to. I think by the end of this podcast, you will really understand this way better.
Yes!
You might understand it so much, you will be
YOLO. YOLO, YOLO.
when you leave my class. So here we go. We talked about yesterday factoring when the coefficient right here is not 1. And in yesterday's podcast, we came up with a complicated, convoluted system. We said you take the first number, multiply it by the last number. In this case, it gives you 30. Then you have to find all the factors of 30. Let's do the same problem today, but let's do it a different way. So same problem today, but let's do it a different way. So, please write the trinomial 3n squared minus 17n plus 10 on your paper. You ready?
Yes!
Okay, first thing we're going to do is write 2 sets of parentheses under the problem. Next thing we're going to do, look at the coefficient. It is not 1. It's 3 here. What can we multiply together to make 3? That would be 1 times 3. We're going to place a 1 and a 3 at the front of each of the parentheses. Now, look at your variable. What can we multiply together to get n squared? Hey, Casper, we could do n times n. So we're going to place the variable n right here next to the 1. Place the variable n again over here next to the 3. Check your work. FOIL first. 1 times 3 is 3. N times n is n squared. Right here. 3n squared. So far, so good. Remember, we're doing the same problem as yesterday, but a different way. So, don't touch this middle term. It's like poison ivy. This last term, we're going to write the letter m for multiplication. Ask yourself, what are all the numbers you can multiply together to make 10? Those are called factors. 1 times 10, 2 times 5, 3 won't work. 4 won't work. 5 times 2, we get a repeat. We already have 2 times 5, commutative property. As soon as you get a repeat, you can stop listing the factors. Now, a positive times a positive gives you a positive, but a negative times a negative also gives you a positive. So please take a moment and write down all of your possible combinations. So here are our possible combinations right there. Now ask yourself, what numbers from our list over here can we add together to get negative 17? So just like we've done before, we're going to write the letter A over the middle term. We need 2 numbers from this list that we can add together to give us a negative 17. So here are my possible combinations, positive 1 and positive 10. If I add those together, it gives me 11. Positive 2 and positive 5, add it, gives me positive 7. Try your negatives. Negative 1 minus 10 gives you negative 11. Negative 2 minus 5 gives you negative 7. Nothing seems to add up to negative 17. Nothing seems to add up to negative 17. That's because you are getting trolled. Anytime the coefficient is not 1 at the beginning, the problem will try to troll you. So don't get trolled, because one of these combinations will work. One of these combinations will work. Don't get trolled. if the first term does not have a coefficient of 1. Are you ready for a brain break?
Yes!
Cool, let's take a brain break. Don't let this happen to you on the Algebra EOC. Epic fail. Remember, when this first term does not have a coefficient of 1, the problem is trying to troll you.
Uh-oh.
One of these combinations will work, so follow along. Two positive numbers will never add up to a negative number. Two positive numbers will never add up to a negative number. So I know that I can get rid of all these positive numbers. So I'm going to use a little bit of PO. That means one of these pairs has to be the correct combination. So you should have parentheses 1n, leave yourself a space, parentheses, parentheses 3n, leave yourself a space. One of these pairs has to work. So why don't we try a -1 here and a -10 here. Or we could put -2 here and we could put -5 here. One of these pairs has to work, but we're not sure which one. So let's say you're all ready to work the problem, and Mr. Houchin walks in. And you know, he's from Kentucky. And he says to you as you're getting ready to work this factored problem, you know, in Kentucky, we do the problem a little differently. And you say, what do you mean, Mr. Houchin? Well, you see, in Kentucky, we could put the -10 here in the front. And in Kentucky, we could take this -1 and put it in the back. See what I'm talking about? And you say, oh, I never realized that. Thanks, Mr. Houchin. And then he says, well, you know, in Kentucky, we might just take this -5 over here and put it there in the beginning. You see what I'm talking about? And you say, oh, so Mr. Houchin, in Kentucky, you might take this -2 and put it over here. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, because that's how we roll in Kentucky. And you say, thanks, Mr. Houchin. No problem. I know you're going to do a good job on that Algebra EOC, because we do in Kentucky. So, you should write down all of these possibilities on your paper, because one of them will work. Please write down all these possibilities on your paper, because one of them will work. Now, you're going to use FOIL to guess and check to see which of these works. You're going to use FOIL to guess and check to see which of these works. One of them should FOIL out to this trinomial. So, please FOIL out these binomials until you find the one that gives you the correct answer. It might be this one, it might be this one, it could be the third one, or it could be the fourth one. So this is where you have to do a little bit of guess and check. So you can pause your paper and do that now. Mr. Houchin wants to know, so did you find the one that works? Because we did in Kentucky. And then Mr. Houchin tells you before he leaves, remember, anytime the coefficient is not 1, the problem's trying to troll you, kid. Don't get trolled. And you say to Mr. Houchin, well, I know that one of the combinations will work, so I won't get trolled, because I'll use guess and check. And Mr. Houchin says, hey, here's a little bit of money. Would you like to call?
Taxi!
And you say, thanks, Mr. Houchin. I'm gonna call my...
Taxi!
Good night, boy, kid. Enjoy your spring break. See you here in another week or so. Later.